What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bed Boys, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. I'm Christian,
I'm Brian.
and we are the Bed Boys. And today, as usual, we got another banger for you. Got the dynamic duo here in the studio, the virtual studio, that is. Um, Dude, since our last episode, we obviously talked about the Bum Energy cream soda. I don't know if it's just a recency bias, but I feel like I've seen a lot of different companies doing root beer and cream soda energy drinks, and like companies that I haven't really even heard of before, but just like I was cruising through Stacked 3D. Stacked 3D,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I get like a lot of my just quick and dirty energy drink news. And it seems like a lot of people are doing the root beer flavor, the cream soda flavor. So I don't know if
I
it's a
know.
trend or what, but
I know. Rise kind of came out with one.
yep, root beer float, I think it was.
Yeah,
I'm
root beer
excited to try
float.
that because they
I
kind of
mean,
redid their formula with a little bit of cognizant in there. So
yeah. I'm not gonna fault them for doing that.
yeah.
I. It's one of those things where it's like the competitive market becomes better,
Hmm.
and I think that's what we're really starting to see. And you have like those big titans, the people who really push the envelope. Like Ghost started the kind of partnership flavors. Everybody started getting partnership flavors. Then C4 came out with Skittles. Then it came out with Hawaiian Punch. Rise had the sour punch straws. And Country Time
Country Time
Lemonade.
lemonade. Yep.
Lemonade. I think we both slurred that one when we said
Yeah.
it. But then you have on the flip side someone who's saying we're not going to do any branded partnerships or branded flavors. It's just going to be old time soda flavors that everybody loved. Root beer, Dr. Pepper, cherry cola, cream soda, the orange kind of Fanta flavor, like cherry slush. Those like iconic flavors that everyone's always kind of been like, oh yeah, those are over there. Versus now, like having this. So it's I'm excited about it. There's a lot to be gotten out of this. Um, and I think it's only going to improve everything else. Shout out Hank too, seeing if he could get us the Bear Bells 20 grams of protein. That's kind of sick.
Yeah, yeah, dude, shout out Hank. I saw that they're also like kind of teasing an energy drink as well. Like
I think so.
that should be interesting.
The other thing is like Gorilla Energy being a can that's not. So Gorilla Energy is different than Gorilla Mind for anyone listening.
Yes, I just found that
And
out. I was like, what the hell is this?
yeah, and it's a way different thing. Oh, Grizzly was the other root
Yeah,
beer and
that's the
cream
one
soda
that was root
flavors.
beer and cream soda, which I looked at that. I was just looking on Amazon. I'm like, Grizzly, never heard of this. Shit's like crazy expensive.
How much is it?
Dude, I looked it up. I don't know if I was looking it up on Amazon and it was like I want to say it was like over $40 for like a 12 pack.
That's insane.
Let me fact check this though. I don't want to give them
Yeah.
bad. Oh yeah,
While
what the
you're
fuck? This is $49.99 for a 12 pack. That's insane.
you wouldn't catch me dead. I don't care how good the
Yeah,
energy drink is. I don't care how good it is.
it's only 160 mgs of caffeine too. Like you better be. Come on, Grizzly. Who's behind this?
That energy drink better have testosterone in it.
I don't know. This is like, it really doesn't look that special. I'm looking at the comparison to the competition, us versus them. 160 milligrams of caffeine versus 300. Okay, so like that's like it's inferior to me. You're not like
That's
getting
not
you're
that's
not
not a that's not a woo. That is a
yeah. Okay, zero sugar, 10 calories versus corn syrup and calories. Okay, but
What are
everyone's
you
in the
comparing
sugar-free
yourself to?
version.
Soda?
Yeah, like no artificial colors and flavors. I don't give a shit.
The,
Versus
the,
nasty food dyes, and then
no one
great
puts a
tasting
dye in it.
flavors, like great tasting flavors with no bad aftertaste versus chemical like aftertaste. Yeah, I wonder who this is. I think this is just making this shit up.
Is this a joke? Is this a meme?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Where's
come on,
Ashton
dog.
Kutcher? Am I on punked?
Yeah, like what the hell? Like I thought, Gorilla Mine like $35 for a 12 pack is getting up there, but like
At least
50
it's a
is
fully
ridiculous.
formulated
Yes,
can.
at least it's a heavy hitter. Like, come on now.
There's a
How are
couple
you gonna
other.
expect me to buy that?
There's not a chance in hell.
Exactly.
There is a couple other drinks that are being released. Kind of going down my list here. We have a watermelon sour gummy from Rain. Very,
Did
very
see
excited.
that.
Very excited about that. The Punk Punch from Monster, which I
Hmm.
believe it's supposed to be like a almost like a raspberry strawberry kind of punch. Obviously, we talked about the Bear Bells protein soda in pineapple, wild strawberry, and sweet cherry. So shout out Hank again. I think I'm gonna ping Bear Bells again one more time and see if they'll send us one to review.
Dude,
That
Barbell's the protein bars are so elite.
I remember we reviewed a couple of them when we first started, and we were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, these are amazing." We had like,
Yeah.
and then in the more like ready to eat instead of ready to drink category, Pop Tarts, 10 grams of protein per Pop Tart, I believe.
Oof.
But it's still going to be a high calorie. Everything else is about the same in the Pop Tart, which
Yeah. That when they do that, I'm almost like just give me a regular Pop Tart because like it's still hella it's still like 400 calories for two Pop Tarts.
I guess this is where I kind of disagree with you on that.
You would rather have the protein instead of the carbs if it's the same calories.
If it's so like I don't really like the legendary Pop Tart kind of deal.
No, not a big fan either.
I think those taste a little chemically artificial. So Grizzly, there you go. There you can compare to them. Um, but like if you're just throwing a little bit of protein in, but everything else tastes the same, the texture's the same in like a regular Pop Tart, I'll just get that Pop Tart instead of the regular Pop Tart
That's fair. It
because I'm eating
depends. I
brown sugar cinnamon
guess.
anyway.
Yeah, I guess if it tastes the same, I'll be
If it
interested to see
tastes,
if the price is the same because usually
yeah,
they jack up the price on the protein stuff.
true. If it doesn't taste the same, then just give me the regular Pop Tart and I'll eat a protein
Yeah,
shake.
that's true. Because like I think is Legendary the brand that also does like the protein donut too?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm kind of out on those. Like, just give me a regular donut. Um,
there is one brand though that does something that I love, and it's called Kindling
I
or
have not heard of
Kinders.
that.
It's either Kindling or
Oh,
Kinders.
I think I've heard of Kinders, not Kindling. I think like the stuff you use to start a fire.
Yeah, it's Kindling. It is Kindling.
Oh wow.
They do protein pretzels, and they're amazing. They have a dill pickle, a honey mustard and onion, a garlic parm, and like a sea salt flavor. And that you can't. It doesn't taste like the texture is no different than like a Snyder's pretzel or a rolled gold. They're really good flavor, like the little flavor dust, incredible. But it's like I think a bag of pretzels is $5 now. Those are like six, but it's 8 grams of protein for a serving. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna eat that instead of eating chips.
Right.
So that's like an easy swap, you
Yeah,
know?
I'm with those. I'm not a huge. I guess it's like the same thing with like the Quest chips. Like they taste good enough, and
Yeah. If they taste good enough, they're not too expensive, and the texture is close enough, I'm gonna
then it's
swap it
worth it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But where it's usually gonna be two different things is the flavor is gonna be way off and it's gonna taste like protein powder.
Exactly.
Um, or it's $5-6 a serving, and you're like, all right, this isn't even worth it. Like
Yeah.
that's where you're gonna lose me, and I think that's where a lot of people have gone a little bit far on this.
Hmm. Not a huge fan of Bang, but it looks like they're coming out with like a
Lime drop kind of
lemon
thing.
lime. Yeah, I like that flavor. Still not a huge fan of Bang. Um,
Same. I just don't know what it is. They just don't do it for me.
yeah, well that's just like the formula. I guess it's like a very similar to like a Rain, like a simple formula with a lot of caffeine. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Bang, it just doesn't do it for me.
It's very like I equate this, and this is how what was the other? Was it Muscle Farm? Not Muscle Farm, Muscle Tech. How
Hmm.
they used to have their branding. It used to be like this like very iconic like early 2000s like bodybuilder. Like that's what it was like kind of branded towards, where it was like this like shredded all over the bottle, this like kind of gaudy packaging. And it's still so stuck in that realm. It's hard for me to like be like, "Oh, this is probably going to be good," you know?
Right.
And I just don't know what it is, but the branding will get you. And it got me. And I was like, I'm
It
turned
will.
off by that.
Yeah. Have you ever had I know Black Rifle Coffee, but I guess they make energy drinks now.
They're not bad. I think they're a little pricey. They are a little pricey. I think I can get my hands. I've had them. There's a place around here that I can get my hands on a couple to review. The blue Raz isn't bad. I think the white is a little meh. Everybody tries to clone the white monster, and I just don't think you're going to clone the white monster.
No, never. Do you like actual Black Rifle Coffee, or have you really tried it?
I haven't had the Black Rifle coffee. What I have heard is it's okay coffee, and it's for veterans, made by veterans, so they donate back.
Okay.
I don't, I don't know if that gets me to buy a $37 bag of beans.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive also.
Yeah, I mean, like that's just tough. That's a tough look. I do have two new energy drinks for me to try today in front of you, which
Let's do it.
which hope
You do it.
which hopefully soon you'll be able to be doing the same.
That's true. That's true.
Um, I have one that I know is good, and one that I'm hoping isn't fucking terrible.
That's a good balance.
Two sides of the same coin. So first one, we have a brand that has gotten a lot of shit from us, and it is Celsius. I have the Celsius Spritz Vibe, the Sparkling Snowball Frost Limited Edition. 200 milligrams of caffeine. No high fructose corn syrup. There with Grizzly on that one. No aspartame. No artificial colors. Again, with Grizzly on that one. 7 essential vitamins, proven in 6 published university studies. Now, however, are they clinically dosed? The answer, they're clinically dosed in all the B vitamins and niacin. Low on calcium, low on vitamin C, only 70 and 40%. That's fine, though. Chromium, 50 micrograms, which is 140. Pantothenic acid, which is basically a B vitamin. And then biotin, 300 micrograms for 1,000%. And they didn't used to have biotin in here. That's been like a recent kind of formula change for Celsius to cater a little bit more towards the ladies.
Yep. Get your skin and hair looking good from an energy drink.
Not always like a Celsius can type of guy. I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, feels like it's really got a lot going on. It used to be a simple can. I do like the gold top, though.
That does look nice.
I like the gold top. But without further ado, I'm going to very, very lax on the pop. It smells sweet.
So this is supposed to be like a snow cone flavor? I feel like that was a very ambiguous description. I'm assuming it's like a white, blue snow coney type of.
I think that's
deal?
what's supposed to be, is like a blue snow cone or like a blue icy, very similar to like the bum blue snow cone.
Okay.
But off rip, if you grade it on the Celsius scale, pretty good. Overall energy drink scale, it's
Decent.
up. It's decent. I would say slightly above average. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. But if I'm in a pinch and I have to get a Celsius, I'd probably choose this one over a lot of other flavors. Now I have a brand we actually just talked about a little bit ago, who's now making a root beer float. We have the Rise Cherry Limeade Kool-Aid 12 ounce.
Oof.
Very cool looking can, obviously. Rise has an iconic kind of brand. Kool-Aid, it's got the Kool-Aid Man on there. Here's where they kind of went a little bit different. Only 160 milligrams of caffeine, or 150, sorry. When it says gut friendly, because it has prebiotics in there, so kind of taking some of the Poppy model with putting some prebiotics in the soda. I don't know how much that actually helps, to be honest, because you have a natural gut health, and it's going to be a biome that continuously starts to build up and decrease bacteria on its own. Um, what's really different about this one is there's 8 grams of protein in this, so it's 40 calories,
Hmm.
zero sugar, zero carbs, 8 grams of protein, or sorry, 2 grams of carbohydrates, but zero sugar, 8 grams of protein. Um, what I do like, and what I will tell you is right off the bat, having drank a case of these already, pretty hard to get sick of. Um,
Having drank it, it's trialed and tested.
we have Bev Boys University studied this product over a week, drinking 12 of these.
Yeah, we should start doing that because I mean, I want to know. I want to like actually look at the studies that they say is
I
on the
know.
can, see if they're actually like worth anything. Be doing our own in-house research.
That is a stark cherry limeade flavor. Um, I will say it's probably the second best cherry limeade flavor that I've had in an energy drink.
Behind Ghost, I'm assuming.
Behind Ghost, slightly in front of the Rain cherry limeade. And the Rain cherry limeade is really good.
I
And
forgot about that. I do like the rain cherry
those two
limeade.
are very forgotten flavors. Um, I will say what pushes it over the edge is this tastes exactly like the Kool-Aid cherry limeade. It just has a little bit of carbonation to give it the bubbles. Um, the only reason I put the Ghost ahead of that is probably going to be the Ghost is as close as you can get to Sonic cherry limeade without slapping the label on there. But they already had the flavor profiles from when they worked with Sonic. So I think they just kind of use that to replicate it a little bit. This is very good, though. I'm going to pound for sure this Kool-Aid one, and we'll see if I work through the Celsius throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah, that's just for like a sipper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
350
go.
milligrams through my veins today. Starting it off.
I'm gonna go ahead and go with nothing new. Power Punch Sparkling Ice. Haven't had one of these in a while. Been ripping the White Monsters, but know what you're gonna get. Nothing too crazy, but 160. Might be one of the last times I have one of these for a while. You know, never know.
R.I.P. a legend. It's crazy to me that you like swirl your drink.
Yeah, I know. I need to stop doing that. It's definitely not good for my dental hygiene.
I was gonna say your dentist either hates you or loves you.
Yeah, for the money or yeah,
The work, but there's definitely money in there.
for sure.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah, I think dude, Rise is low key pretty sneaky with like they get some really good flavors. I feel like I haven't had a ton of their stuff, but like whenever I do, I'm like, damn, that's kind of like, and I think it's also like an availability type of thing. I don't
Yeah,
see them like certain gas stations will have them, but like
it's not everywhere. It's not
yeah, like I
well
don't see
known.
that if I go. I'm not seeing that if I go to a Casey's or like a Quick Trip, something like
Yeah,
that. You might see it in like probably like a 7-Eleven maybe or something like that.
to where they have the national chain ones. You'll see it
Yeah,
that are
that are
like.
like national. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I remember I picked up I think it was the sour straw one, like the green apple sour straw one.
Mhm.
That was fire.
I love their blue raz sour straw. The Kool-Aid one I think is my favorite one out of Rise. Like not this one, the cherry limeade, but it's the 16-ounce can, the like tropical punch Kool-Aid. That thing bangs.
Yeah, the Country Time lemonade's really good.
I
I
remember us
think.
reviewing that.
Yep, I do remember that. I think they have like a Baja Blast type of flavor.
Baja
I,
Burst.
yeah, I want to try that because I remember I low key got that kind of confused because remember we tried so there's Rise and then there's
Mhm.
Rays.
Yes,
As
and we
much
did raise
we
like
had
Baja.
Rays Baja whatever they called it and that shit was trash. I was looking forward to it and it was trash. So Rays is definitely inferior to Rise.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
God, that's so
Rise also
disappointing.
does they have Sunny D, which
That's
I'm
right.
not I'm not a huge Sunny D guy, but like that's a sick flavor to like add in.
Yeah.
everyone typically goes for like, and they did like Ring Pop and Smarties. I don't know how well the Smarties one went over, but they definitely kind of went in a different direction than a lot of other people did when they did their branding. Like again, Ghost going when they had like the Mondelez deal, kind of for like Sour Patch Kids, Warheads, that more like, I don't want to say fringe candy, but like the we're adults and we like candy. Whereas like Rise kind of went in the other direction, was like, let's go grab those childhood ones that you love, like Kool-Aid. Let's go grab Sour Punch straws. Let's go grab, Ring Pop or Sunny D. It's like almost like the nostalgia play. And I
Hmm.
do like that because it's something different. And I think like when you do brand deals to get a flavor, you kind of have to you got to find like a lane that you're going for, right? Like Rise, like I said, went for like that nostalgia. Like we're gonna get the flavors from your childhood. Whereas like Ghost kind of went like, hey, we're gonna get the stuff that you liked as a child, but now you love as an adult because you want that little bit back. And then there's like some other ones where they're like, it's kind of out of left field, and you don't really like how does like where did that come together? Um, C4, I don't really know. Like they're kind of a little scattered. Because they did like Hawaiian Punch, and then they did like Skittles, and then they did Starburst.
And they
I
did
don't
Jolly
hate
Rancher.
and Jolly Rancher. I don't hate any of those. I think that's awesome. Those are all incredible flavors. Um, I think they were just like, hey, let's do brand deals with people that we like and flavors that we like, and that worked out. Now, I don't know. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. I could be scattered here, but those are the ones that come to mind when you're like, okay, those are the ones that went really well. I don't know what the other ones are that didn't, and maybe that's for good reason.
Yeah, we forgot the ones that didn't end up going very well, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really. The Jolly Rancher C4, very good. The Hawaiian Punch
I
can kind of miss
love
me.
I love the
Well,
Hawaiian Punch.
the ones that or no, the popsicle ones. The popsicle
Oh,
ones you can miss me with. I will
I
mix those up
remember
quick.
I remember us reviewing the popsicle and they
Yeah.
were very sweet.
Yep, you can miss me with that. The
But
Skittles
the
to me was okay.
it's a Skittles is like a tough one because it's like an androgynous flavor.
Yeah,
Like
it
it's
is.
it's
It
like,
really
oh, it's
is.
kind of like you're throwing all like if you put a handful of Skittles in there versus like, oh, it's gonna taste like the red Skittle.
Yeah. That's why I think they hit a little bit better when they did the Starburst because I was like, okay, pink Starburst, yellow Starburst.
Red
Um,
Starburst, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The Jolly Rancher is probably my favorite collab that they did. The
The
Green Apple Jolly Rancher.
it shouldn't, and this is what I think C4 did really well is like green apple is like a tough flavor. Like we've talked about the
Hmm.
ghost one and like the sour green apple. It's like it's really good for a couple sips, and you're like, I don't know if I can do a whole can, let alone a case of this. Whereas like the Jolly Rancher green apple, they hit it just right to where like I can do a whole can of this. It's not overpowering, but man, does it taste close to what it is. And I think that's sick.
Yeah, very good.
Do you remember, not to get too off topic, but do you remember the like Mountain Dew Rise? It was like their energy drink. It was like 180 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, I did. I never had it, but I briefly remember it. I feel like they didn't have it for very long, though, if I remember correctly. Like it was a pretty quick stint.
It was like in and out. It lasted probably shit. What felt like 6 months.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have it.
They were like their zero sugar energy drink. And they had some good flavors. Obviously, like they had a pomegranate blue burst, which was like a berry pomegranate. They had tropical, strawberry melon, the typical flavors like orange, and then like kind of like a triple berry kind of deal. But they did a Baja Blast flavor, and it was like most of the cans were silver. The Baja Blast can was like the Baja Blast like light blue. I used to drink those a lot because I was like Baja Blast with almost 200 milligrams of caffeine. Give
Can't
me
beat that.
that. Give me that.
Yeah. There was, what was the one? Kickstart.
Yeah,
That's
it's
like throwback. but that was like Mountain Dew mixed with juice with some extra caffeine. That was like when
Yeah.
I was in like middle school, high school. Kickstarts were a thing.
And Kickstart had like the weird like can that like you like slid the top almost. You remember that?
Yeah, yeah,
That was a weird one. And I think they try basically I think what from what I understand is like people liked Kickstart more, so they ditched the Mountain Dew Rise and just kind of went all in on Kickstart. Um I Me personally, I like the Rise better than the Kickstarts because I didn't want the extra calories from the juice and obviously more caffeine, but to each
yeah.
their
I
own.
feel
And
like
I feel like Mountain Dew drinkers wanted the sugary taste.
yeah. I was just gonna say I feel like it's kind of tough to convert people that are used to just cranking full diesel Mountain Dew and
Yeah,
just taking that away from them.
that's like the thing is like it's hard to do that because it's like what is your target market and what's your competitor, right? Are you trying to be an energy drink or are you trying to go after soda drinkers, and what's the difference? Whereas like for people who like energy drinks, the Rise or Mountain Dew Energy was probably like, oh my god, this is so sick. Versus like a soda drinker was like, oh, that's too much. I just want like a regular pop, and I don't want artificial because there's so many people out there that doesn't understand an artificial sweetener, and they're gonna be like, oh, you're gonna put that, you're gonna have cancer. It's like, do you understand that I'd have to have enough of that in me to kill a horse in order to kill me?
Yeah, and then they're the same people that'll have a bottle of Mountain Dew, which is like damn near 80 grams of sugar.
Yeah, and then be completely sedentary. Guess what, man? A zero sugar energy drink does hate to see me coming.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyways,
let's get into something serious here.
yeah, let's get into something serious here. Um, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but it's definitely a hot topic for a lot of people, and that is we go air quotes here like core training or like torso training, whatever you want to call it. Um,
Abs.
yeah, abs. Like, yeah, can I do abs? Um,
Can we do some abs? Why don't we do any abs?
yeah, yeah. I feel like people are already kind of getting where we're going with this, but yeah, whatever you want to call it, torso training, like direct core training. Um, is it necessarily necessary? What even do you categorize as the core? I think that's kind of where it all stems from. Is it's just kind of a real hairy definition, and I don't know. I definitely think there's merit to training your torso
Mm-hmm.
like in a more of an isolated fashion. I don't think that people say like, okay, like if you squat and deadlift like and know how to brace, like you don't need any other direct work. It's like, okay, you are getting a little bit there, but you're not
It's
really
also a
getting any.
secondary attribute to
Yeah,
the.
and you're not getting any rotation, you're not getting any, lateral flexion, you're not resisting lateral flexion, that kind of stuff if you really want to go into it. Where does that fit into? And then there's another I feel like a lot of there's some core exercises, so to say, that I think just are essentially useless. I
Mm-hmm.
hate to say that, but some of them I just don't think are really doing anything, and you're better off just not doing them at all, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you kind of fall on one? What does that even mean to you? Two, how do you implement it into your training?
I think you should train the abdominal muscles, the I guess rotational muscles like the obliques or the lateral flexions, as well as like the low back. Like I'm going to include all of that into like that trunk area. Um, Here's where it gets a little hairy, especially, and a lot of bodybuilders will probably be very similar on their take, right? It's a muscle. If you want to train a muscle, you have to give it load and then you have to give it rest. You can't just do 150 ab work every day and it just gets those protrude more, right? So they need load. Um, Here's where you're going to get into trouble. with these two things. Number one, like in athletics, you train for go, not just for show. Um, so like the ab work that you do is probably going to look different than the ab work that the average gym person does. You're probably going to get on a GHR, probably going to do essentially like a T-spine rotation with a weight. It's going to fire you up, that's for sure. But it's not just hitting a couple crunches. You might do like a hanging like leg switch where you're getting the separation of the hip flexors and the extensors to work together. Will they feel it in their abs? Yes. Is the like primary abdominals being the main mover or the main purpose of the exercise? No. But it is essentially everything that's happening from the pelvis to the top of the rib cage or like the bottom of the rib cage. So like the training should look different. Am I going to throw in ab wheels every once in a while for them? Yeah. Or say hanging leg raises, whatever that might be, just to let them have something and then obviously get it under a better load. But as you train something, it gets larger. That's what people have a misconception with. And like if you look at like a bodybuilder, they'll be like, yeah, like a lot of times like I'm going to diet to get my abs instead of having them larger. And a good example is like you look at like a CrossFit athlete, like the top CrossFit athletes are a bodybuilder. Which one of them probably does more ab work? Probably
For
the
sure,
CrossFit.
CrossFit.
Yeah. A CrossFitter's body is much different than a bodybuilder's body. A bodybuilder's body will have that like very slim taper towards the waist where you get like this V look. Whereas a CrossFitter is probably going to have far more protruding abs on a regular basis, but their torso is a little bit boxier. And that's because it's inherently, it is a little bit more muscular. Um, as that develops, it will kind of fill out. And as it fills out, it looks a little bit more square than it is kind of in that taper. Whereas like the diet will lead you to show the abs more and probably get that more iconic look that the average person is probably looking for. Is that going to be more structurally sound in athletics? Probably not. The thinner something is, probably the more frail it is. Does it look prettier? That's up for debate. I think the average person in the way that the bodybuilding standards are is probably, yeah. It's not going to be the functional thing. Also, like you're not going to walk around at 4% body fat. And anyone who tells you that they are as an athlete, you're an idiot. Like people diet for 6 to 12 or sorry, 16 weeks just to get to 4% to step on stage where they can have a death from a single paper cut. You don't walk around like that eating Cocoa Puffs, like,
Yeah.
and dining hall food. Like that's not true. But my point being is like, it should be done. I do it. We're going to do it more so in those kind of aspects or rotational movements when it comes to like med ball throws, cable pulls, things like that, to where we're training the function out. I hate the idea of like saying like we're doing functional training, but like we're training a movement versus just the muscle itself. Whereas I want you to be able to have a ground based movement and kind of rotate through and feel that, whether it be just slower than what you do in sporting action or even something you're not exposed to, but preparing you for that. Yes, it will probably inherently build that musculature, which is good because it's going to then allow it to move freer in space. I think that is more important for sports than having just protruding abs. And I agree with you. There are some exercises that are far more valuable than another. Kind of going back to like the load conversation of like it has to be loaded and it has to be rested. 150 reps of a body weight ab circuit probably isn't going to do much in comparison to, say, even just comparing it to a GHR sit up. The GHR is going to get the low back a little bit. It's going to absolutely fire up the hip flexors as well as the abdominals. You know, a hanging leg raise, even say a toes to bar where you have to have the momentum. I'm not going all in on CrossFit. I'm just saying. Or like a GHR T-spine rotation, things like that, where like definitely it's like after like a couple of reps, you're like, okay, you can feel that almost like, I don't want to say super maximal like load on there, but the average person might cramp up a little bit versus like the average person, if you can walk into it and just rip 300 reps, it's probably so submax that the volume has to dictate it and you can only do so much more volume over time.
Yeah. if you can't add, I mean, I hate to say it's not worth it if you can't add load, but if you can't add load, the progression is severely
Limited.
limited. Exactly. Um, and then you're really just working muscular endurance at that specific region of the body, essentially, which is
Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of the same thing with like, it's big in baseball to do, arm care, air quotes. And really, at the end of the day, like it's not good or bad, but it's usually just ends up being local muscular endurance at the shoulder, the
Mm-hmm.
rotator cuff, a ton of reps at a super low intensity, stuff like that. I do think that you made a good point of like it's a muscle just like anything else. It has to be loaded. Um, and I do think there's, especially like when I think of baseball, you know, hate to say like rotational sport, but a lot of rotating at high velocities during a swing and as well as the pitching motion or a throwing motion. So I think direct rotational training, whether it be at now, we know that, if you swing a baseball bat as hard as you can, that's like a super high velocity. And a lot of that is really just going to come from skill work. But I think you can kind of prepare those tissues on a local level by doing both heavy rotational work, doing like a cable rotation or something like that, heavy load, really trying to grind through those kind of like gritty reps. And then also, I know I see people doing, you can use bands. I've seen people kind of combine the cable and the bands to kind of do like a rapid response for the cable rotation. I think that stuff can be good, kind of like building more velocity into things. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with like side bending. You can do heavy loaded side bends, kind of grit through those reps, and then do kind of like a drop catch side bend. I've seen a lot of people do that. I think that stuff's good. And then you can do the same thing for your abdominals too, with different types of like sit up variations on the GHD, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it is worth it. It's I think we probably both agree that it's not like the bread and butter of your program, but towards the back end of a workout, what does it hurt you to, if you train 3 to 4 days a week, put in 1 to 2 things, and you can kind of mark off all those categories throughout the week depending on what the sport is. And I like the point you brought up with like the hanging leg switch. You can kind of get a 2 for 1. Yeah, you're getting some torso work in there, but it's also hip flexor. And I mean, depending on who you ask, some people do consider like hip flexors and groin muscles part of the core, since they do kind of attach to the pelvis. So that's a good point to make too. I think, yeah, it's like you say, like in bodybuilding, people will like avoid doing oblique work because that'll kind of make them more blocky around the midsection. They're kind of lose that V taper a little bit, versus like in CrossFit, they look a little bit more blocky because they're not afraid of really how they look. They look a certain way from their training, but they're not. It's not really the sport.
Yeah, and it really comes down to like what are you trying to do? And the average person is probably like, I want to look like a bodybuilder. When someone steps into the gym, they probably start hitting like the bro split, the push pull legs, the upper lower, whatever that is. Um, because they're not necessarily worried about performance. They want to look better without a shirt on and feel good about themselves. And that's totally fine. Like, by all means, please do it. We should have more people care about what they look like. Um, I'm big on that. However, like, number one, don't listen to every person who has an Instagram, because every person who has an Instagram thinks they're a damn coach, and it's not true. Hopefully, my girlfriend just heard me say that through the wall. Um, and then number two, like, if that's the look, like, try to understand a little bit. Like, don't think of it as just like I go to the gym, I work out for 35, 40 minutes, and then I go home and never think about it. You don't have to become obsessed with it, but try to learn a little bit about more of what you're trying to do, right? If you're trying to build your chest or you're trying to build your arms, you probably increase weight, you probably increase the time under tension, the reps. If you're doing that, if you want to do that for your abdominals, you should probably do the same thing. It's not the same, it's not different, and you can't have localized muscle fat loss. So like, or sorry, you can't have localized fat loss. So like, you're not just ripping a bunch of high volume reps down there so you can lose body belly fat. You know, like if you're gonna stress it, it's gonna grow a little bit, and and then you have to like commensurate that with your diet, and then you'll start to see more protruding abs, possibly a larger kind of like midsection or torso where it's gonna look a little blockier. Diet a little harder, cut a little bit more fat. Will it look a little blockier? Maybe, but it's also gonna look sick when you are in that like 8-9% body fat, or even rocking around like 12%, 13%. The larger the muscle, the more it will show, regardless of the body fat. Um, so that's like the other thing too. It's like, you know, we talk about guys like Chris Bumstead. When he's like in the off season, he throws on like another 30 pounds, and he's walking around and he's like, yeah, I feel like shit, but like I'm happier, I feel healthier, and then he still has protruding abs.
Exactly.
And he's at like 16% body fat.
Yeah. What are some ab? The thing is too, when athletes want to do extra abs, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they always pick the worst movements. Like if they pick
Flutter
them, so
kicks.
yeah, it's like flutter kicks, just crunches or like
Mm-hmm.
sit ups. What are some quote unquote ab exercises, core exercises that you think,
Are valuable,
yeah, or
worth your
things
time.
that you just need to die, yeah, things that you think aren't valuable.
The one I hate that I can't stand is like the stupid one where you're like almost in like a little hip bridge position, and it's like the penguins where they go back and forth and slap their feet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I hate that. I hate like the flutter kick. Like I don't hate a crunch. It's just never really done like the best way. I'd rather see like a V up,
mhm.
where you're really having to get into like that supreme flexion. Um, those are the ones I like. Any of the ones where you're just laying on the ground, kind of doing some body weight stuff. Not a huge fan of. Even like some planking at a certain point, like it's like a it's like an ISO in another sense, where it's like you got to put some load on there now because we're past that point. Now,
Yeah,
weighted
body weight
plank,
planks.
a
Unless you're
weighted
like a
plank,
beginner.
yeah, a weighted plank once you're like got a little bit of foundation, I do like. But I like extreme ranges of motion for the abdominals or the low back. I really like a GHR sit up. Is it? I don't think you need to like slam it and go crazy, but like go rip 5 sets of 10. You want something high volume, you're going to be fired up from that. I like a hanging leg raise, or like a toe to bar, or like just a hanging like knee tuck where you're like rotating the pelvis underneath you at the finish. I love an ab wheel, especially in that like extreme range of motion. And as you get stronger, you just go from your knees, you go to your feet, right? And now you get low back, and you get the abdominals. And uh, I don't care what anyone says, you're going to get a little bit of shoulder work because your hands are above your head and you got to hold that weight. So I'm a big fan of
100%.
those. Um, and then like I said, like the GHR is like such a monumental piece when it comes to abdominals as well as like posterior training. But the T spine rotation, where you just got like something as little as like 10 pounds to 5 pounds, or even 2.5s, and you're just kind of holding it and maintain like a rotational aspect on there. Stuff like
That's a
that.
staple in that's a staple in your program, I know.
And
Or at
it
least it was when I was in Elon.
still is, man. And like
I like
people,
it. I like it.
you can throw in 2 sets of 5 each side, and people are fired up. Like
Yeah,
they're
with
like,
almost no
that's,
weight.
yeah, with almost no weight. And they're like, that's so hard. It's like, yeah, because you have to maintain control and fight gravity the entire time. Like, and you get a little bit low back on there. You know, same, it's the same thing of like, we're getting a 2-for-1 deal. It's really firing up the abdominals or the obliques. Good burp. And then
Damn,
like,
you heard that? Didn't even open my mouth.
but like all those things, like I think they're really, really good. And it's like, you want ab work? Fine, then we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it like we do everything else, and we're gonna train it. We're not gonna like throw it in there and I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna babysit some bad movement.
Yeah. I think anything that has like those secondary or even tertiary benefits, that goes for any movement. Like hanging leg raise, you're getting, some grip work in there, you're getting shoulder traction, and then also abdominals. I think that's great. The
Mm-hmm.
ab wheel, I think that's overrated. You're getting into that shoulder flexion and having to resist. that, especially when you go from, we're having our guys. I threw in because the ab wheel just from the knees. I think most people once they do it for a little bit should be
Can
able to
get
do.
there.
But like I like doing it from the feet. Now a lot of people won't be able to go from all the way down and back up, but I like to go from the feet, super slow eccentric, almost like an eccentric overload, and then
Mm-hmm.
come back up from the knees and then start over. And you can just do like even like a set of like 5 or 6, and you really try to control that eccentric going from the feet. Yeah, your abs are going to be fired up, and like you're going to get a little bit of shoulder work out of that too.
Big
GHT
fan.
is obviously tough to beat. Going from, and that goes for like back extensions too. I agree. Like
Mm-hmm.
the low back can't be overlooked when it comes to like whatever you want to call is like the core back extension. If you have a, you could even throw reverse hyper in there. I like grabbing the like reverse hyper arm, but going from a back extension. It's a little bit different. Like obviously you can weight a back extension by holding a plate, holding dumbbells, but just having to hold that, you can either hold it with the handles or hold it from the actual rope. And those are kind of a couple variations of, getting some really good low back work that also can kind of help you with, if you have to maintain, if you're holding it to your chest, retracting your scap too. So it kind of gets some secondary benefits there. Um, Pure like isolation work. I love like a classic cable crunch. It doesn't really give you a ton of like secondary benefits, but I think if you do it right, you can really get like, if you truly get like that full extension and try to actually flex your spine instead of just bringing your chest to the floor. I think those can help you out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson curl, you could throw that in there. Some really good low back work. Um, Definitely got to be like a little bit careful with the
Conscious.
loading at first. Yeah, just be conscious with the loading at first. I like to start with like even just like a kettlebell, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of working to a barbell there. But that can be really good for some spinal flexion.
I,
Obviously, there's a bunch of carry variations that can be great for that too.
yeah. There's one on there. I can't remember what it's called. It is a curl. Um, I'm blanking on the name. I'm so stupid right now, which is fine. Set the bench to an incline bench, hold the back of the bench, and your hold is just
Uh I can't think of it now either. I think of those as like almost like I call those like candlesticks,
yeah,
or like it's for some reason I'm thinking of like Bruce Lee when you describe that. I
yeah.
don't know
But it's the
why.
same thing as like a
Like a
hanging leg
dragon
raise.
slay. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the
I
same
know what
thing
you're
as a
talking about.
hanging leg raise. You're just holding the pad of the bench as you're in like an
Yep.
inclined position and rolling that pelvis up. Like that will fire you up.
Hmm.
Again, because you have to fight so much gravity in a longer range of motion. Um, what the argument that we're making is time under tension, extreme range of motion. That'll help. You want to build it, you got to do those. If you're doing partial ranges and underloading, it's not going to do much, i.e., a crunch. But
Leg raise, where whatever. Wow, what do you do when you just hold your legs like 6 inches off the ground, like a
yeah,
leg raise,
like a
ISO
leg
leg
lift,
lift? I
yeah.
Yeah, those were used to be pretty big.
I'm gonna find this name.
What about dead bugs? Because I feel like that's
I
that's an
don't.
interesting one to me.
I don't hate them. Again, I think it's just you get to this dangerous area of like you're kind of like getting past it. You know, I don't hate
Yeah, I
to
think
stir.
it's
I don't hate to stir the pot or like a body saw though.
yeah, I'm in on that. I think the
I
dead
I
bug
do
is
like
very
those.
introductory. Um,
Hmm. And once you
I
get
like
past
them.
that certain point,
Yeah, it's tough. I like them with like a band.
hmm
Um,
I think like it becomes what are you looking for exactly out of it, and once you know that, that's when you're like, okay, I know what it is that is the biggest thing for it.
mhm.
It's not a damn. It's not a Powell raise. What am I looking for? Sorry, I'm going through like my exercise library to try and find the name of this. Gar hammer raise.
Okay.
The Gar hammer raise. For any of those who are looking, go hit 2 by 12 on a Gar hammer raise. Go hit by 2 by 8. Start small. I promise you, it will fire you up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think not to like beat a dead horse, but if you want to train the abs, do it. Just treat it like a regular muscle though. Like keep it simple,
Exactly.
stupid, and just give it a long range of motion. Give it some time under tension. You'll feel the ache much faster doing that than if you do 200 reps of just a core circuit. Whatever people want to call it.
Right. And then I think you can expose it to velocity like you do any other movement too by
Mm-hmm.
med balls. You mentioned that's a great way to do it. Med ball like a sit up throw or like a anything with rotation, whether that's a shot put, just like a side toss, a chop, anything like that, or like with a cable or a dumbbell. There's plenty of ways to get in that velocity component.
Even if it's like the dynamic catch or like the dynamic reversal aspect of it, where you
Mm-hmm.
slam a med ball, say a 4 to 8 pound med ball into a wall, try and catch it, and as soon as you catch it, stop that, just like you would an altitude drop. You're gonna get that super increase of like eccentric force development or rate of force development, and you're gonna have to like absorb that force coming in to stop it. It's a lot more entertaining for the average person too. It's not so mind numbing. You're a little bit more involved and have to kind of be like zoned in on it, but you're getting the tertiary benefits, the secondary and the primary benefit of everything. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
good way to kind of like look your way through things. So like I said, the average person just kind of like try and get a little bit more involved in your own training.
Exactly.
Instead of just doing it, see if you want to be like part of it.
You know another one that I like, and then
Mm.
we'll move on from this because I think we've done enough. I know you are a big fan of the straight leg sit up, especially like with holding a plate.
Mm-hmm.
I like a if you can progress from that, like a single arm straight leg setup with like a kettlebell. Super hard, like having to, and that's like a good example of something with like some secondary benefits too. Like you have your arm extended above your head. It's a little bit of like an offset load. You have to it's like a long lever because you're so extended, your legs are extended, your arms extended, and then having to fight, get up all the way, and then also have some overhead work there, stability, mobility, whatever you want to call it, probably a little bit of both, and then controlling it down. Um, you can start with like even like a 20-pound kettlebell, hit that for a couple sets of 5 or 6. That's probably going to be
Mm-hmm.
pretty tough for most people if they've never done it before.
I
And you
actually
got
really
to do
like
each
that.
side.
I really like that.
Yeah, I've been doing some of those with our guys, and it's some of them kill it, some of them struggle a little bit. It's like they're using a little bit of a baby weight, but they're still getting something out of it. It's like okay,
We're progressing.
yeah, we're progressing.
Huh.
Anyways,
Give me another one. You come
let's
up with
see.
some. You
Yeah,
have some
let
fire
me.
ones.
That's right. Here's one that I had for last week. I had a couple from last week that I kind of carried over. Modality and like implement selection, I think is
Mm-hmm.
something that I don't think we overlook it. Like we know we use barbells, we use dumbbells, we use kettlebells, but I don't often think we think about why. Or I think the why often comes from the constraints of like your facility. Like I use the dumbbell because I'm not going to pair two barbell movements together, or I use the kettlebell because I'm not going to put two dumbbell movements back to back, something that. But
Mm-hmm.
and those are obviously oh, power went
Christian
out.
just lost power. So I'm going to take over on his point there. Like you kind of look at it in like a perfect situation. Would you do one or the other? Or even to the same extent of like, we kind of cop out and say, we're going to do this versus this because this is what I have available. Um,
Am I back?
yeah, you're back. I was just kind
Okay.
of filling in some blanks there where it's like you kind of look at the facility and use that as your why and almost like a cop out of like, I'm just going to rely on like, okay, well, I don't have that, so I'm going to do this. And we get into that versus kind of getting into like, is there a better way to do this? Or like, would I like to see this better? That kind of situation of like maybe the kettlebell is a better variation and you just don't use it because you just don't have them. But like you should think about that in the sense of like, like a waiter's carry, for example. It's like you could use a plate, a kettlebell, or a dumbbell, or even like a med ball, depending on what your real intended purpose is. And it's like, do you just want to go for the simplicity's sake, or is there like, again, like we've talked about, like a secondary or tertiary benefit of this where maybe you want to go for that? Whereas like the plate might be, well, I want more like wrist flexion and
Hmm.
hold it and holding that. Maybe I want to do grip work. So instead of a dumbbell, I'm going to go for kettlebells so that way you have to maintain it above your hand, um, without it falling.
Exactly.
And it's like, I if I'm catching what if I'm picking up what you're putting down, like I agree with you. Like a lot of times we just rely on like, this is what I have in front of me, this is what I'm going to go with, versus like thinking about that a little bit broader. Of, you know, again, another thing I kind of think about this in is, sprinting. Do you use sleds to push or pull? Do you use chains to pull? And it's like, okay, well, I have chains, so I'm going to use chains. It's like, okay, but like, say you're in like a situation where I am, where I have a couple different ways of variation. I have bands, chains, sleds. I have the run rocket, as well as the partner aspect. You know, that's when you start to, I think that's like a really easy one to think about. When you think about like the implement and the modality, it's like, okay, I want to move a heavy load. All right, well, I want to overcome inertia, and that's like the biggest thing that I'm doing. Is it better to use a super heavy chain, load up the run rocket as much as possible, or do a heavy sled push? Well, now you start to think about, okay, now what's the environment like? Is it like a multiple people on the same thing? What's the transition periods? Or you start to think about, is my main goal just move with a lot of weight? Then probably the sled's going to be the better thing. It's easiest to load. Is my main goal that I want to make it look as much like sprinting in like the terms of like dynamic correspondence, so I want to free up the arms? Well, then now I go to either chains, or I want to go with the run rocket. Then you kind of get into, again, overcome inertia, move something heavy. That's the biggest thing. Then chains might be the better one than the run rocket, because that's a little smoother, and it being a little bit more on like the kinetic kind of like loading side, to where it's going to be constant, similar to like an anchor. um, that's when you should have that kind of decide is which one of these is the best. um, and I don't think, again, we pose a lot of problems in the industry, and we try to provide some solutions, but like, there's been times where I've gotten lazy and I'm just like, all right, like the chains are in front of me, like let's use chains,
Yep.
versus the other aspect of like, what's my real goal with this?
Yeah. And I think if anything else, like it's a good thought exercise for coaches not liking it as much anymore. The Celsius isn't doing it.
Coming
Is it
back
just
after
a
like
it's
coming
just a
back
letdown from the
this That's why I paired them together. Like, this almost like tastes like a little rotten after it's like set for a little bit. I think if you crack it cold and then you start to just kind of work your way through it right away, it's a lot
okay.
different. But
But anyway, as I was saying, I think it can be a good thought exercise for coaches if anything else. Like
Mhm.
it may not change your approach entirely. It probably won't, probably shouldn't. But if you can think through your program and think, okay, why would I do this in another scenario? Why would I use a dumbbell instead of a barbell for this exercise? Or why would I use this implement instead of this implement? What's the arguments for and against that? It just kind of helps you think through that kind of thing a little bit more. Um, and to your point, we've definitely all been there where it just comes down to whether, in the college setting where you have teams coming in constantly back to back and the transition period is little to none. I remember when I was at Simpson, that was kind of a big thing we tried to do is like, okay, if we have a lot of teams training one right after another, if it makes sense and they're on a similar like weekly split, okay, can we try to have the trap bar day be the same for all the teams? Like if it doesn't like if we're all going to do lower body, can we have the trap bar day on this day? If we already have the trap bars out, we don't need to switch to, the safety bars. It just makes the transition a lot quicker. Same thing. Like stuff like that. That stuff matters. Yeah, you can argue that maybe it's a little bit more optimal to do a different implement, but is it worth the time that you're going to spend, turning the whole weight room over when you may only have 45 minutes at most anyway with a team? So I think that plays into it. Obviously, facility constraints are big. Obviously, we've talked about that at length on this show. Um, and I think we've all been there where it's kind of just like, like this is right in front of me. It's accomplishing something similar enough that I'm okay with. And I mean, I've even like done that intra session. Like stuff gets a little more crazy than I anticipate. It's like, okay, like wanted to do like a weighted carry. Okay, I wanted to do like a trap bar carry because I'm like, okay, I feel like we've been doing just regular farmers carries for a long time, and shit just gets chaotic, and you're like, like let's just stick with that instead of having to get trap bars out, this and that. But then there's other times where it's like, okay, like you can't do that forever. Like if you want to
Mm-hmm.
try something, sometimes I'm all for trying to, taking into account weight room flow. I think that's really important, especially if you have a lot of groups during the day. Um, and but you don't want to just try to make the setup as easy as possible and neglect having like your optimal or ideally what the session would look like. If you have to set up a couple more things to get what you want out of it, that can be worth it. Obviously, there's caveats to that, but I think you can go too far in either direction.
Yeah, like you can really overthink your entire program, or you can completely simplify everything. And now, like either way, you can almost like lose the forest for the trees in that aspect where you're just like, we just need to do something heavy. It's like, whatever, just get it out there. It's like, okay, but maybe like with a little bit more thought, you could, it could be a little bit more diligent in the programming to get a better effect on what you're going for. Vice versa, you could be making everything so complex when it's like maybe your athletes just need something simpler to just go, and maybe you have to add a constraint to it, um,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, say, or removing a constraint, like I need them to squat something heavy, right? But I know that like we're not great at, like I have these safety bars available, but at the same time I don't know like if they're ready to for that. It's like, okay, maybe just front squat, like so that way if like the hips rise early they dump it, or vice versa, where you're probably going to load it up a lot. The safety bar might be a better option because of the camber on it and where it sits, and you're not putting stress on the shoulder as much, something like that. um or like like an RDL, right? Maybe the dumbbell's the better variation for this group. If it's like a single leg one or whatever it might be, or maybe the barbell is, or maybe like honestly is some kind of like deadlift variation, like with a sandbag better, whatever it might be. It's just finding what's available, finding your desired effect, and which one of those best fits for the desired effect. But you're right; it is a good thought exercise, um, and that's like not to like get into books and stuff like that, but like that's a good thing for like reading like mental models, or like there's a book I read called The Innovator's DNA, where like you go through these thought exercises which keeps you sharper, even if it's not directly applicable to what you're doing. It allows you to force yourself to kind of think more creatively and I guess like independently versus like relying on the situation around you. And it is also like it's a tough spot to be in where you're so flooded, where you're always just like, okay, like you're burnt out, you're in that aspect of like, just what do I have available, this is what's going to be the easiest like thing. To get yourself out of that and keep yourself out of that is, it's something tough. But I think like really good coaches who will withstand the industry versus the industry withstanding them will kind of stay on that side.
Yeah. The book Thinking Fast and Slow is another really good book. Talks about like heuristics and like mental biases. Super good book. Yeah, I think that stuff's super important. Like there are definitely general rules that are applicable to like certain modalities. When you look, like you just gave really good examples with the resisted sprinting, but like same thing for the weight room. Like if you want absolute load and the best chance of getting the most absolute load, barbell's probably going to be your best bet, or safety bar, trap bar, some sort of bar. if you're okay with sacrificing a little bit of that, or you want more like unilateral work, or you want to be able to like move freely within the appendages. Dumbbells are probably going to be a little bit better. You sacrifice a little bit of load, but you might get a little bit more benefits to unilateral stability, or just, if you look for like a bench press dumbbell versus barbell, you can adjust the grip a little bit differently. And you can get, say for like a lunge versus like a barbell reverse lunge versus like a dumbbell walking lunge, you're going to be able to get a little bit more movement in the upper body if that's what you want. Um, and then obviously like kettlebells, maybe a little at first glance they may be a little bit more limited in their use, but I think one of the benefits of them is it's more of like an awkward load that can be used from time to time. Obviously, like everyone's going to think of like kettlebell swings, side bends, the typical things you're going to do with kettlebells, but I think the awkwardness of the load and just like the handle and how it's positioned at a little bit of a disadvantageous way can be good for some variation, if nothing else. So like there's general things that are associated with each of these implements. I mean, you can go into like cables versus bands, stuff like that. And obviously it's always going to come back to like what you have available and the time for the most part, but it's good to think about those things so that you can kind of reiterate over time. And obviously, it's never going to be perfect and you'll probably go back and forth, but kind of arguing with yourself and pros and cons of using different modalities for similar exercises, I think can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And not to like continue to harp on it, I just think like there's a certain extent where you're like, you have to sit there and pause. And I don't know if it's a constraint that we place on ourselves or one that's placed on us, but I don't know if we take enough time to pause versus like, I gotta get this out. I gotta get like, we gotta move to the next thing. It's just run, 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 run. You don't take that time to pause and be like, is this truly what I want to put down?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that can come from on the floor or even like when you're programming. And I mean, that's just part of, you know, there's no shortage of things to do as, a coach most of the time, regardless of, the situation. Especially if you're at a smaller school and you have a ton of teams, the constraints are probably going to dictate that a little bit more than if you're working with one team. But even from that, like, I speaking from personal experience now, just working with one sport, like we have a schedule that's based around, we play morning games, so we can't just take forever with our, I still only get about 45 minutes to an hour for my groups too. I might have smaller groups, but there's always going to be that component. So it's
Mm-hmm.
important to, and it's so easy to put off. I mean, you just said like there's all been that there. We've all had that time where we just kind of get lazy and be like, like this is here. It's more convenient. It's similar enough, but not letting that be a habit, because that's really easy just to kind of, the days get chaotic. That's how it is for everybody. But if you never take that time to reflect, whether that's during the session quickly or when you're at the end of the day, you kind of do like a daily reflection, or when you're making the next program, actually trying to think back of what went well, what didn't go well, and think about what you could have done differently for the next time.
I guess that leads me to a good one for you. Um, how much do you feel like you do yourself, like in this, like a little bit of like reflection, I guess, as a coach, um, like sifting through the noise in your own program? Not necessarily like the external things of like practice or this and that, but like when you're programming, how much do you kind of look through and look that over and be like, am I just adding things to add things? Is this really what I want to get done? Is, whatever it might be, like sifting through the noise that you create. Um, I think a lot of people, myself included, like you'll go through and you add things because you're like, this is such a short lift. Do I need to add more? And then you kind of take that step back and you look at it and you're like, I'm using time to use time versus like, even like if I'm adding an extra set, is that really worth it? Because they're right now they're kind of beat up, whatever it is. It's like, this is what I put down because this is how I felt about it. This is what I thought about it. When you're going through your programming, how much are you sifting through your own noise?
I think I've done a little better job of that. I think back to like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And I think that can, I'm not saying that's a direct application, but it might be pretty close when it comes to training. Like
Mm-hmm.
80% of the benefits are probably going to come from 20% of the things we do: sprinting, jumping, and then our main compound lifts. You could realistically do, like, think, here's a good thing to think about. If you only had 20 to 30 minutes to train a team, what are you going to do? You're going to do those things. You're going to do sprints, jumps, and compound movements for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not going to mess around with a ton of accessories unless you have some time really at the back end. I think a lot of the benefit is going to come from that 20%. Not to say that the accessory movements are not important, because I do think they are important and they can kind of fill in the cracks between things that the main lifts don't do, as well as like they can be good, especially for in season when you're looking for things that are going to give you benefit with a little less systemic fatigue. But I think that's something that I've done a little bit better job, at least this year, just because like I think the population that I've been working with, keeping it more simple, even when I'm tempted to go a little bit more complex, adding stuff like towards the back end, and like not feeling bad when the lift isn't taking up, the full hour or even the full 45 minutes. It's like, okay, are we doing what we need to do with like our big rocks, and then are we at least, and then not just slopping through the accessory work, and just kind of being also mindful of what it's like to be in the athlete's shoes, which I think is tough, especially like further. I mean, obviously, like a lot of coaches were athletes, but the further you get removed from that, and especially if you're working with a sport that you didn't play at that level, I think that can be tough. That's something that I think I've been trying to do a better job of this year, is like, okay, in season, you're playing 5 games a week, you're practicing every day, you get 1 day off a week. Look at the workout. Is this really what you need at this point? And I think that's where I kind of started like taking more of, I wouldn't even say like a minimalist approach, but like everything has to like justify itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, Kel Smith, friend of the show, I know he's big on that, like no fluff in the program. And I think that becomes big. And that 80-20 rule, I think, holds true there, is like, okay, are you doing the big rocks? You can kick yourself for someone if someone has an injury, like, oh, I didn't do enough resiliency work, accessory work. But I think more often than not, overall workload is going to be probably the main proponent of that, and whether or not you trained hard enough in the off season leading up to that, versus like, okay, did you do your all your accessory work during the season? Not to say that to neglect it, but if that makes sense.
I think I mean that makes a lot of sense to me of like that. So I guess like for you, when you're looking at it, where do you decide when something is fluff? Even though maybe before it may have been, I don't want to say a necessity, but something it may have necessitated itself within the program. At what point do you decide that it's now fluff?
It's a good question. I
Yeah.
think I think before I was really big, and I still think this is like a solid way to program. You want to try to get every single like anatomical movement within the training week,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it just doesn't make as much sense from a time perspective. And if you look at what they're doing, like for baseball, for example, do I really need like rotate a ton of rotational work in season if a kid is already like throwing through catch play, swinging in the cages? Like, what am I gonna do in the weight room from a rotational perspective that's going to add to that? Like, that's going to help that. I think my time to do that was probably in the buildup in the off season, like we just talked about with those, like, doing rotational torso work. I think that's something where it's like, okay, what is this doing? Like, it's like throwing a chair off the edge of a sinking ship.
Mm-hmm.
The ship's already sinking. Like, that's not gonna do shit. And that's gonna look a little bit different for every excuse me. That's gonna look a little different for every sport. If you are with a basketball team in season, or is that going to be a time where you're really emphasizing a lot of intensive plyometrics in your lifts? Probably not. They're getting a lot of that from the sport. So I think, like, taking that away, and I mean, this is something that we kind of know and talk about, like, give them what they aren't getting from the sport itself. Um, so I think that, I mean, rotational stuff is an easy example for baseball. Like, direct arm work is an easy one. I'm all in for direct arm work, but I'm probably not gonna, like, add that in super. Like, I'm not. It's not really gonna be important in season, and I'll find that the guys that want to do that are gonna do that on their own anyway. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to. If you have an extra 5-10 minutes, you can go ahead and hit that, but I'm not gonna mandate. You know,
You doing it.
yeah, like 3 sets of biceps. Like, if you're, um, I think I'm a little bit more conscious of a ton of, like, grip intensive stuff. Not that I wasn't conscious about that before, but, like, overall, especially for, saying, like, pitchers, like, I'm not going to put, not saying, like, I'm not going to do, like, pull ups in season. I definitely still do, but, like, just still little, like, nuances like that you kind of pick up from just hearing the players talk, like, oh, like, this is bothering me, or maybe you, like, read a little bit of research or a little bit of combination of both. I think stuff like that is stuff that needs to do a little bit more work to justify itself in the program, especially in season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that kind of stuff is that for me.
Okay.
Do you
Yeah, I
have
like
something
that.
like that for track and field, or even for football?
Football, not so much because it's all so simplified when it comes to in season. It's like, hey, we have the upper body lift and then that lower body kind of more dynamic lift in the aspect of, like, it's simplified. It's like every accessory is like it should be there for like a resiliency standpoint, and then there's really like one or two main lifts.
Yeah.
Um, uh, a press and a pull, and then a squat and a hinge on the other day. So like it's like how simple can we make it to make sure that we're still able to get what we need to do? And DeMarco does a lot more on that side of the programming um, than any of us. So there is that. And then when it comes to like track and field, when I come to like in season, I start to look at it as like, and again, it comes from a different place because obviously being like the sport coach as well. But I'm like, it's more important to me to get like the direct hip work for like a hurdling. So I'm going to spend 15 extra minutes there, and I'm probably going to shrink the lift on that aspect to say, well, then I'm going to just get my main things that I can't get out there in here, like the heavier squat pattern, the extreme, plyometrics, those types of deals. I guess like where I start to look at it is in some of like the again other accessory work, um, where it's like say like the multis that are coming in. I would rather them come in and get some like just general like localized endurance on the cuff for them than because they're gonna go out there and throw you know X amount 20 to 40 intensive throws or 30 extensive 10 super intensive on the aspect if they're throwing shot or throwing jab whatever it is. So I'm going to be more concerned about how do I build that up to stay healthy and how do I just maintain that level of resiliency that they're at versus kind of getting into, well, now I need to hit like extra tricep work to get some more juice out of that throw or a lateral kind of throwing movement. When it comes to the sprinters and the jumpers, for me, that's when you're looking at it like, what's the stuff that you kind of like go through your programming and you go, if I only get 3 of these, what's the 3 that have to stay? Okay, those 3 have to stay. Okay, now I get 3 more, and it's like if I have an ideal situation, this will make it a really really good program. And then you go down to the third category, and it's like if I have to cut 3 things right now because I'm only going to have 30 minutes, what am I going to cut? And that like has helped me like as I program to be like, okay, necessary, good, and can move the needle. But if I can't get to it, then like if we're in such a big pinch, this will be cut. Okay, if I lose 15 minutes in my session, I kind of go in like 15, 20-minute blocks of like, if X, then Y, if X, then Y. And it's like the things that typically get cut will be a, not to say like it's not important, but like the 3-ray band ankle in like as a kind of like a rest period or like an active rest, or the some of the ab work sometimes, or even just like say like some of the smaller cuff work that everyone does versus like the more, I don't want to say specific, but the more event specific kind of stuff where it's like some of them only get this because they do this, versus everyone's going to have this piece. And that's like you'll kind of see those towards the tail end of the lift in like the C and D blocks versus like the A and B blocks. Whereas like I'm never going to cut my explosive block unless everyone just got absolutely annihilated, which for the
You're
most
the
part,
coach
like,
now.
yeah, like I know that that's not going to happen, so I know that's not getting cut. I'm not going to cut my compound movement, whether that be an upper body press pull, lower body hinge, or lower body like press or knee extension. Like those aren't getting cut. What I might cut is maybe like the secondary like knee dominant uh, hamstring work. If that's the case, because I've already got it and I'm like I don't need to load it as much, or we're running out of time, or like I know they got fried a little bit. It's not worth it. Cut that piece, or even just cut a set out. So I'm honestly more concerned about cutting the volume on something than I am cutting the exercise, which is a little bit weird, um, in the sense of like it's I've always preached like how you load something is much more important than what you load, to where it's like maybe the exercise itself isn't as important as you believe, but I'm like, okay, if I still want to expose them to different patterns and different things, if I just cut a set off the last 5 things on the card, we can still hit on that and probably touch enough to get some kind of simulation from it without overbearing and like overloading that localized tissue damage. So that's probably where I'm going to aim, is like, what does my total tonnage look like? What does my volume look like? And my focus is kind of gone on paper. It looks like, oh, you're trying to keep all your exercises, versus it's like, no, I'm trying to limit the load. And it's very easy to limit the load by removing the exercises. But it's like at the same time, is my compound too much because I have 6 to 7 sets? Well, maybe I cut that from 6 to 7 down to 4 to 5. And now I've reduced enough of the total like global stress to where everything else can remain. I'm just limiting a little piece. I'm not cutting that exercise. We're going to keep it. I'm just making it a little bit less volume. Or maybe I knock down some intensity coming from like the point of, hey, I just watched everyone jump coming in the weight room, 2 inches below what their standard norm is or their normative value is. Okay, well, I just need to reduce some load, and we're going to move it maybe with a little bit lighter emphasis, focus more on like just the speed or the quality of the movement instead. So like coming from like the load perspective, I think that's like where I've spent a lot more time like sifting through the noise, like going through the kind of dusting everything off, and looking a little bit deeper than just the exercise itself. But if I have to go from like an exercise perspective and I'm like, it's necessary that I keep the load on this because it's part of the progression, then I'm going to look like, okay, what can I remove that's like smaller or more isolation work that won't be a physical adherence if it's not here this week, but it's okay to have next week in that sense.
Yeah, no, I like that way of looking at it. I think both ways can certainly work. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously like a little bit different because in baseball, it's you play every day. You can't just, you have to continue. It's a long season. You have to continue to try to develop throughout the season, and you're going to have to end up lifting on game days before
Mm-hmm.
or after the game. That's just kind of nature of the beast. I think for I'd be interested to like see how this changes when dealing with like older, more experienced players. For like younger guys, I'm more inclined. I do like the way you just try to limit the. You might cut the sets before cutting the exercise. I think, in my opinion, for like younger guys, I would rather have them do less exercises and try to keep what I had planned for like those compounds because one,
It's going to probably
I
do more for them in their
yeah,
development.
exactly. And just like learning barbell competency, I think is huge, especially like learning how to work with the barbell, like getting them more exposures to that. If they can get really good at that, accessory movements are probably, they're going to be probably less challenging. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just a bigger lever to pull for that type of guy. But I'd be interested to see, if you're working with a guy that's, in the major leagues or like at a higher level and they're more physically developed, do you take kind of an opposite approach and just do kind of what you just explained with how you do with the track and field team? I don't know. It's interesting, and I don't think. Also, keeping in mind that a lot of our players will have like some program through our like medical staff athletic training where they're doing a lot of that like localized cuff work. Like if I see like a majority of the guys doing that with them, I'm probably not going to bother throwing that in there, and I'm not going to you know beat a
Mm-hmm.
dead horse with that. I'm going to try to go to the other side of the spectrum and try to go more absolute load. Okay, if you're getting your internal external rotation direct localized work, okay, now I'm going to give you like a weighted neutral grip chin up, and that's going to kind of get the other side of the spectrum for that. So two ways to look at it. I think they both work. Obviously the context is always key there, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of ways you can skin that cat as usual.
It always depends.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What do you say
What do
on
we
the?
have for this?
I was gonna say, yeah. What do you think on your ice? Your potentially final ice.
Yeah, dude. I mean, the power punch. I'd say the the berry one is definitely my favorite flavor. I mean, for these slim cans, obviously we know the citrus twist is elite.
Mm-hmm.
For down here, it's up there. It's in like the probably like 7.5 to 8 range. Obviously, the white monster is king, um, but it's not too shabby. 160 to the dome, I'll take it.
I love it. And
What
I
about you?
can't.
What you got on?
I'm gonna start with my good one. So as you can tell, that one's empty. My Rise Kool-Aid, 150 milligrams, 8 grams of protein, some prebiotics. I'm not like super focused on the prebiotics. Pretty good looking can, great price. I bought a 12 pack for $30. Um, so I'm gonna go 7.4. Very solid. I don't know if I'm always gonna pick this one, but it was a great change up. And if it's like available in the store and I'm like in a pinch, I'm like, oh, a couple 8 grams of protein on there too. Like, let me snag that. Very good, and I love the flavor. Cherry limeade. I'm a big cherry limeade guy, and the Kool Aid cherry limeade's always been like one of my favorite flavors. And it's clear, so there's no dyes, so you're not getting the red teeth. So really good. 7.4, super solid flavor. Um, Celsius Spirit Vibe. As you can tell, there's a lot of liquid left in that can. Um,
Started off good.
Started off good. I was more pleasantly surprised. I do love the gold top on the can. I think more cans should do that. The rest of it, meh. Um, Ingredients are kind of whatever. Like I do like that they use teacrine to kind of get the natural caffeine, quote unquote. It's just a slower release, so there is that. They always do a nice job with that when it comes to Celsius. What I don't like is that every flavor you fucking drink ends up tasting like the metal can that it comes in every single time. They say no aspartame, but then they use a different. They'll use obviously absorbic acid. They're going to use sucralose in there, which you can say no aspartame, but it's still got this, and everybody freaks out. That's besides the point. You're still consuming an artificial sweetener. As long as you're cognizant of the volume that you have, how you load something is more important than what you load. So,
You can
um,
do a little bit of crack.
Yeah.
It doesn't
As long
matter
as you're
if
not
you
getting
crack.
addicted.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but like the big thing is like it tastes like the can that it comes in, which is crazy because they're like their target market is this like super health conscious, more so on the effect that a lot now is like a lot of female driven. I think they're chasing the Alani new kind of market as they've kind of
Hmm.
turned the corner in this like new generation for Celsius. Um, First sip, probably 5.8. After letting it sit for 10 minutes and trying to consume the rest of the can, 4.3.
Oof, that's rough,
Yeah.
but pretty average for Celsius,
That's on
to be
par for
honest.
them.
That's
That
on
is
par.
on
That's
par.
right on
That's
brand.
on par. Yep. They used to be really good. I love the Celsius heats. And now, like, every time they come out with something, it's a very, very sweet flavor or the sugary type of flavor. And it tastes extremely sweet to start. And then it goes to metallic. Um, and me personally, I'm not vibing with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Obviously, we'll have some exciting news probably to come in the next couple of weeks here for the Bev Boys and what's going on with us and what we're able to kind of get our hands on and release with some different changes, maybe some changes in scenery. I'll leave it at that. Um,
Yep.
but we appreciate you guys for hopping in, tuning in with us. We love you all. Follow us on Instagram, bevboys.tv. Follow me under BSZUTKOWSKI. Christian can be found at.
French_fit40.
We love it. We love you guys. Subscribe to us on YouTube. That's our biggest platform. We need that subscriptions. It helps us grow. It helps us continue. Obviously, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, those are also great as well. Leave us a review on both of those. I don't know why. I don't know how, but for some reason, there's an evil wizard in the sky that overlooks both those platforms and says, if there's no reviews, we're not pumping it. So leave us a review. Tell us you love us. Tell us you hate us. Share it to your friend. Tell them we're idiots and they need to listen, that they have to argue with us. Leave a comment. But most of all, if you tuned in, you're at this point. Thank you. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.